Welcome back, everybody. We're here for another episode of Quarantine Questions, and I'm inviting my good friend Don Christensen to join us. Don, welcome.
Hey, Scott. Good to be with you, buddy.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Don, you're our first non-athlete guest on this show. So we've been talking to
Wait. What are you talking about? Non-athlete.
Well, I'm sorry. You're retired like me.
I'm kidding.
But yeah, you are the executive vice president at Ronald Blue Trust. You are in charge of the pro athlete division, and you're also my financial advisor. So I thought it'd be great to have you on, and so it's great to have you.
Well, it's good to be with you, buddy.
You bet.
You know how much I love our mission, so.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. And of course, we've been having a lot of conversations in the midst of all of this economic uncertainty. And you've helped talk me down from the ledge. Not that I was ever on the ledge, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a fair degree of uncertainty. And what would you say is the one thing that people need to hear right now regarding their wealth in this time of economic uncertainty?
Well, if you look in most of our lives, we've always lived in economic uncertainty. We just look at it from the where we're at now, from the rear, but we never look at it when we're going through it. But I can remember from the 50s on, economic uncertainty, long gas lines. My first mortgage was at 10.5% in the early 80s because of inflation. We've had crashes in 87. We've had them in 1999 when it was going to flip over to Y2K, 2000. 2008, 2009 was an unprecedented time. So we've always lived in economic uncertainty, and God's not surprised. He knew it before the foundation of the earth. One of the verses that always comes to me during times like these is from King Solomon, who said in Ecclesiastes 11:1, said, divide your portions into sevens and even into eights, because no one knows what evil may befall the earth. Boy, that verse has never been more apropos than now, because nobody can claim they saw this coming. So I just tell people, hey, if you understand the principles, you're in it for a long time, you do the right things, then you're going to be fine. It'll all work out well for you. So for us, it's, the right buckets. I always tell people, look, hey, you need a cash bucket. You need an intermediate term bucket, which be bonds where you're lending money to corporations and the government. And then you need a long-term bucket, which would be stocks. And if you've got the right amount in each bucket, you shouldn't be having an emotional crisis at this point in time, or you're just susceptible to fear. Then you need to ask, you got a whole other issue you need to ask about.
Don, I love how you incorporate biblical truths and spiritual wisdom to financial planning. And that's one of the things that has always brought me a great deal of comfort, because it's not Don's plan, it's God's plan. And he has put a lot of things in his word that we can glean from in order to be wise with our money.
You bet. Remember, money is not immoral or amoral. Money is just a tool. It's a tool that God uses to further his kingdom. It's a test to see how will I handle it. And it's a testimony when we handle it well. And really it's for God-given purposes. And we look at it that way. That's why he says throughout scripture, he claims to own it all, every bit of it. He told Job, everything under the heavens is mine, saith the Lord. He created it. We are created beings. We don't create. And I always tell people, created beings have no rights. They only have what their creator gives them. And, the right to hold money and wealth is at his discretion to how much goes to each person. But there's an accountability factor that will come someday with all of it, especially if you're managing what belongs to someone else. The question always is, do you really believe that? Let me see your checkbook, and I'll tell you whether you believe it or not.
That's one of those Donisms that I love. Yeah, and you've served as such a great guide for me and my family in matters of stewardship and managing our wealth. You've worked with some wonderful organizations. You've helped guide us to organizations. Matter of fact, the reason that I'm working for Water Mission is because of you and the introduction that you made. But what are some of the criteria that you're looking for whenever you look at an organization or a charity in terms of what boxes do they need to check in order for you to really sign off and to invest and advocate for them?
I think the number one thing is, are they gospel centered? Relief without the cure is just making people feel warm and fuzzy while they enter into an eternity where they're lost. I just don't. If we don't, we say we love God and we love others, then we want to love them and make sure that we have everything given them the good news that provides for forever, not just for now. So I always say the cure has to go with the relief. Mm. So is it? I look. The first thing is, are they really involved with people on the ground that are pastors or gospel centered who can make the most use out of this in their culture to spread the good news that Jesus really loves them, we came there to help out of our love for them, which is a basic understanding of his love for us. We are Jesus with skin on for a lot of people. So will that organization really promote that? That's the first key. Then the second key is this: what kind of accountability do they have? I like to look at their reports. Are their reports, how much is going to actual field work or how much to all the other aspects of it? So, and then for us, because I serve a group of people that are very wealthy, many times, most of them, and they have a lot they're called to give. So how will this fit them? Can they get involved with it so they really go with their money? And how can they do something significant for somebody rather than something, insignificant? You're just adding to a pile of money sitting in a bank account. So it really is. I think most of our players and our friends, Scott, are really looking for something. Hey, how do I meet a project that I can own that deal, go with it and be part of it, and go out there and share my testimony with it? And you've been taking guys there to do that. And you and I have been doing that for a number of years in Honduras, Mexico, and places like that. Cuba, we've been in Cuba together. And I think that's the thing where people get excited about what's the real purpose for why God has given them the money he has.
Yeah, great point. I love what you say, how when you spend your time and you go into these places, it just means so much more than just writing a check. And you and I have been in some places, as you mentioned. You yourself have been in over 60 countries and in some tough places too, like Eastern Europe under the Iron Curtain and the killing fields of Cambodia, communist Cuba. Talk a little bit more about what some of these experiences have taught you and what you hope others glean by being there.
I think one of the key things that I'll tell people is this: poverty is relative, meaning this: if you show me somebody poor, I'll always take you to somebody poor. I'll never forget being in the mountains of Guatemala once among the Cedar Hill Indians, thinking these guys are really poor. But when I hit Calcutta, India, and watched people taking baths and potholes in the streets and feeding 2,500 people every day, that's all the food they got was in these feeding lines. I go, that's a whole different case of poverty. So I think no matter where you go, each culture has its own different issues. The other thing that you realize is that how much the West, we've been given 80% of all the evangelical wealth of the world among our Christians. I'm talking about among believers. We only have 9% of those believers, but to me, our call is to spread it out to all these other people and help them, since we have the resources. And I think that sometimes we spend so much time in our churches and our comfort and our convenience and just think of, well, they're just people out there. You go, we get so theologically sometimes that we got all these books, all these commentaries. When you go to Cambodia, Scott, they can't even hardly read. They're just happy about this God that died on a cross. That may be the most simple thing they ever get. And that the simplicity of the gospel out there. The other thing that you understand is that you come to learn is that the poor really understand what to worry about. Their worries are real worries. They are looking food today. I was just got a bunch of guys involved in in Mumbai, India, because we have a situation in the slums of India where India just did a complete lockdown for 1.5 billion people. These people have to go out and get food every day. And so we were able to provide for 1,500 families. It's only $30 a month. So we were able to provide for 2 months for 1,500 families. We're working in, Pat Bradley with Crisis Aid, worked in Ethiopia. The pandemic, when it hits Africa, I mean, the way they can't social distance, they are in need of food every single day and safe water. So you just realize that their needs are real and they're immediate. And so we can sometimes sit here and talk about them a lot, but they don't sit around and talk about it. They really know what's a real worry and what's not a real worry.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to biblical stewardship, you have shared with me why people don't give, and you've got some very specific reasons. And I'd love for you to share some of those with people too, as we think about how to be stewards of what God has given us. What are some of the mistakes people make, or why don't they give as God intended them to share of their treasure?
Well, I think the first thing is if I did it like a pyramid, and you just took the bottom layer of the pyramid, the number one reason is it's a spiritual problem. It's a spiritual issue. They don't think the way God thinks because they've not been in really understood what he said. Jesus gave enough parables about people that built bigger barns and then just didn't think of having good foundations with built up. 1 Timothy 6, Paul says, hey, it's not wrong to be rich. You can't help you're rich sometimes. Everything was given to us. I don't have to feel guilty about being wealthy. But Paul says, tell those who are rich in this age to be rich in good works, building up for themselves a foundation for the life to come. Do you really believe in eternity? Then you realize your wealth is for something. So the number one thing is understanding God owns it all, and that God expects, he expects us that we're going to spend some. We have to take care of our families. We need to save some. There's precious oil and treasure in the house of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it all up. He understands that, hey, you know what? Spend some, save some, invest some, and give some. He wants us to, hey, giving is not God's way of raising money. It's God's way of raising children. How do I help you understand? He can make money out of fish's mouths. He can do anything, but he's chosen to use us as that vehicle and to test us. Do you really believe what you say you believe? So I think the number one issue is spiritual. The second is that people don't plan to. It's just they don't do enough planning to understand, okay, if I'm a steward, I need to plan because someday I'm going to give an account to God at what I did with it. So they don't plan to give. And then what comes out of that is then they don't know they can give. Many people don't know they can give more. I tell people who make more than $150,000, $200,000 a year, I go, guys, I don't think 10% is enough. I think, you know what? It just doesn't cost you anything. It costs you something. It doesn't cost you what those people in Cambodia cost them when they give. Theirs is much more sacrificial. It doesn't matter that I have to be sacrificial, because sometimes, if you're given a $100 million contract, you're going to always give out of your bounty, but you can give out of your time. You can give out of how God's gifted you in speaking, like a lot of our guys do, but your wealth goes along with it. But you've got a plan to do that. And I think one of the other ones is that they just don't have the relationships with people. They haven't built ministry and thought about missions that say, besides just giving to their church, about going outside and saying, you know what, I'll give this to my church because I owe it, because I'm getting feeding there, I'm getting my utilities, I'm getting my kids get to be in these buildings. I owe something to my local church as my part of that, whatever one deems that is. But to go over and above that, you can do that by getting involved in other missions and really start doing some significant things that people can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, that's good stuff. So you painted a picture for me one time, and I'd love for you to share it here. And it's from Matthew 25:35. And I know you know what I'm talking about. And really you have brought about this idea that, yes, we will give an account for what how we use the resources God gave us, just like you mentioned, not in terms of our salvation. Only God can do that, but in terms of what he gave us and the experience, maybe of what heaven will be like. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's the one. I can remember a PAO conference years ago, and Dr. Tony Campolo was one of the speakers. And he said something that really, this was many years ago, he said something really caught me. He goes, I think that Jesus is going to ask you about 6 questions when you get to heaven. I was hungry. Did you feed me? I was naked. Did you give me something to wear? I was in jail. Did you come visit me? You know, I needed a cup of water. And there were other questions that were there. I was sick. Did you visit me? That he asked. He goes, you better have someone come up behind you and say, yes, he did. Well, I hope I have a lot of people come up after me and say, he did help us. He did. Because you're saying, look, at as much as you've done it for people you see, you've done it for me because you've never seen me. So I think that's the whole issue, is that, do I really believe? And not I don't want to do it out of performance for Jesus. I don't have to perform for Jesus. He already did that on the cross. He did the performance. He got the verdict. He got a 10, and that 10 was passed on to me. But I do it out of because I love what he did for me to take that verdict. But now I want to reach out and do something else to help other people. And people who start their giving and really go in and plan to do all these things, or to really with their finances, they're just happier people. They're just more peaceful, and they can enjoy their wealth more because of their ability to say, I don't want to enjoy it more than I'm enjoying God. And the way I do that is by giving.
I can agree to that, and you have taught me that lesson, and I can attest to the joy that comes from giving. And I really appreciate you for all that you have taught me. I appreciate all that you do for Water Mission, and I guess I'll close by having you just say a few words about Water Mission, your experiences with them, why you believe in this ministry so much.
I think that, years ago, the story how I met George and Molly was they were at one of our partners meetings. And I had always looked for guys that asked me about safe water, and I'd been through a few of them and thought about, but I just wasn't impressed with that there was staying power in some of those ministries. When I heard George and Molly and how they were on the ground and they put staff on the ground to care for people, and that they actually, the safe water, what they were doing with the pumps, the going actually into the communities to protect, because people are having to stand in long lines. I used to see that getting water and the danger to girls and stuff. I said, aha, that's what I've been waiting for. Someone I can partner with in some of our work, because I believe in holistic ministry. Hey, if I'm going to go build the orphanage to help the kids, hey, how do I take care of their school? How do we help them with water? And I just been looking for a long time. And boy, I tell you what, when I hooked up with George and Molly, I said, I said, you got any projects? And they go, oh, we got a few. I don't think they thought I was serious, but we ended up in Africa together with my granddaughter got her first mission trip at 11, Amaya, and Dee Dee, my daughter, and we ended up with George and Molly, who met us from Israel. We had so much fun, and I just watched what they were doing and was so impressed with how the difference that this safe water, what they could do, and how it could change people's lives, and it's absolutely needed. So you always want to know that the people you're doing it with and the gospel is always there. I always saw, no matter what, they were sharing their faith. Their pastors they were working with were sharing it and using it. So I just became a fan of Water Mission, and to this day. And I introduced you. I remember we went on that trip with them to Honduras, and I told George and Molly, "This is the guy you want right here, man. He just come out of baseball. Go after him." So.
Yeah, well, I love what you said earlier in this interview about the relief. The cure must go along with the relief. You can't just provide relief; it's got to be the cure. It's got to be the eternal hope that comes. And Don, you're a wonderful partner. You're one of our Water Mission All-Stars. I'm going to flash this up there. And don't let anybody tell you that you're not an all-star. I know that you're as much of an athlete as any of the athletes you represent. So thank you for your time.
Oh yeah. I'm a legend in my own mind.
There you go.
Sorry, brother.
All right,
Hey,
buddy.
great to be with you.
God bless.